Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tosa Talks. We're hoping we have a nice audience out there watching us. Hello to all of you. My name is Robin Luther. I'm from Tosa Together, and I want to welcome you to Tosa Talks, Building a Diverse, Thriving Community. We're an ongoing Facebook Live series, proudly presented by our sponsors, our generous friends at Bethesda. Tosa Talks features 3 monthly presentations designed to provide meaningful discussions around racial and social justice issues to support the work of building an inclusive anti-racist community. Tonight's talk is a discussion on reconceptualizing housing for people with disabilities with our special guest, Allison Katula, from a very impactful community organization called Bethesda. I'd like to invite everyone to be part of tonight's conversation by adding your comments and questions in the Facebook comment boxes below this video, and we'll be sure to address those during tonight's presentation. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, Robin. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. We're so glad to see you. I'm really looking forward to your presentation tonight. I know we talked earlier about what you're going to cover, and you have so much great information to share about your organization and the priority work you're doing with disabled, developmentally disabled neighbors. But maybe before we start, I know you've got some good information and slides to share, but before we start, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and just take a moment to tell us about your position at Bethesda and what maybe brought you to this work.
Sure. So I am a nonprofit person. I adore the nonprofit sector. I have been working with older adults actually for the last 15 or so years, and then was looking for something else. And I actually ran into Tom Campbell, who is the vice president of real estate for Bethesda, and he had this vision for Cornerstone Village, which is one of the concepts I'll talk to you about tonight. And it just caught my imagination. I have 2 children on the autism spectrum. And so the future of housing and services for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities is really important to me, and really important to the community. There's a crisis occurring. So that's kind of how I got into it. I wasn't expecting it. It was, kind of like the rest of my career, just kind of fell into place for me. But it's been wonderful. I am the independent living advocate for the organization. So I reach out to community organizations, parent groups, and I try to make all of those, kind of connect the dots and make all of those connections as we sort of build relationships in communities, get to know communities, and then hopefully build developments that support the needs of people with disabilities.
Can I ask you, what areas of Wisconsin do you work in? Are you strictly in Southeast Wisconsin, strictly in Milwaukee, all over the state?
Sure. So Bethesda is actually based out of Watertown, and it has a long history. I'm actually based right here in Brookfield, right on the border of Wauwatosa. I worked out of Wauwatosa for 15 years, so very familiar with Wauwatosa and the community there. And the communities that are being looked at are right here in the Milwaukee metro. The other communities that we're talking about are in the Twin Cities and then in Sacramento County, California. And then we're looking at other cities as well. So, but Wisconsin is the heart.
Very cool. I was going to say that it seems like, with Tosa Talks, we talk to a lot of people about different equity issues, social and racial justice issues. And it feels a little bit like the issues affecting developmentally disabled adults are a little more unknown, a little more hidden from the general public.
So sometimes persons with disabilities are called the invisible population or the invisible constituency, because they are often forgotten or unseen. And there is an intersection with persons with disabilities and inequality or inequity with racial issues, and also with other types of issues, including housing issues. So we'll be covering some of those things tonight, but the disabilities community actually butts up right against other communities that are impacted by inequities.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to be talking about it in this context.
Yeah, we find a lot of intersections in these discussions. It's very cool. Would you like to start? I know you have some slides to share. Would you like to start with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me just get this set up.
I'm always impressed when people know how to do this. This is very cool. Oh, it looks perfect.
All right, so I did call the presentation Reconceptualizing Housing for People with Disabilities, and I think you'll get a sense of why when we get into the history of housing, because there is a long history and we've come a long way, but we still have farther to go. So again, thanks for having me tonight to talk about these really critical issues. So Bethesda, this is a wonderful organization that serves adults and young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in 13 states across the country. And again, based in Wisconsin, providing homes, support, and providing all kinds of supports and advocacy for people with these disabilities. And we see ourselves as a change agent. We are always on the cutting edge, forward thinking, always thinking about how can we make that next step to improve people's lives. So that's another reason why I was attracted to the organization, is that they're just constantly moving one step forward to make those improvements.
Before we go any further, just in case people are not familiar, maybe you could define for us what an intellectual and developmental disability refers to. I know that you mentioned that you're the parent of 2 kids with autism. So we right away know that you're considering that within that spectrum of people. Tell us about the population that would be defined as having intellectual or developmental disabilities.
Sure. So typically these are people that have been diagnosed in childhood with some sort of disorder or disability. And I think the most common ones that we think of or that we have exposure to are going to be autism, because it is more and more prevalent today or more diagnosed today. And then Down syndrome. So those are 2 that I think are more common, but there are many other chromosomal and genetic disorders that would fall into this category as well. There are also various learning disorders and conditions that fall into this, and things stack. So for example, my children have autism, but they also have ADHD. So these things can layer on top of one another. And then, there are things that we don't think about at all that fall into this category or into this bucket as well, like fetal alcohol syndrome. So infants that have been exposed to high volumes of alcohol in the womb have detrimental disabilities through childhood, and then that impact their adulthood as well. So all of these things fall into this bucket, but typically, again, diagnosed in childhood.
Got it. So we cannot pigeonhole anybody with this. I think you were referring to it as IDD as a way to shorten that mouthful of words. That this represents many different people with many different abilities and different challenges, and a broad spectrum of abilities of being independent and needing assistance and support.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my philosophy on this is that independence is not black and white. It is literally every shade of gray. So we'll be talking about independent housing options for adults with IDD, and they will be bringing in supports. And sometimes those supports are heavy supports, sometimes they're light supports, but people want to live at their highest level of independence, and that is possible with these supports. So this is a bucket of conditions and syndromes, but the grouping of people is so vast and diverse.
Right.
So in terms of the services that Bethesda offers, I mean, they provide safe and loving homes for people, including a host home program in some states, which is really innovative and interesting. A lot of technology, and I'll talk a little bit about some technology that we're utilizing in a bit. But focusing on independence and well-being. We have some financial security programs to help people stay on track with their disability supports and their finances, which can be really challenging to balance all of that. And then access to community and access to faith. Those are things that, you know, as a person who lives my life, these are things I don't have barriers to. And sometimes people have barriers to accessing things within the community, and we want to make sure people don't have those barriers. So
Mhm.
we see to it that they don't have those barriers. So we affect people's lives in lots of different ways. And I alluded to that this is an organization that is really forward thinking. So there is 116 years of a legacy, and just so much future and promise that the organization, you know, is focusing on just, you know, a lot of really exciting things. So pioneering a lot of really life-changing services. And I think one of the things that they're doing is they're looking at the entire person at every stage, every age and every stage of their life, and trying to figure out where are we missing the mark, where can we better support them. And then if that service doesn't exist, if there's a gap, then we need to go into that territory and create it ourselves. And that's something that we're doing right now with this Bethesda Cornerstone Village model of independent living. So just pushing those boundaries.
So it's very fluid. It's very fluid. You're watching for what is needed now, and then that's where you're moving to. So it sounds like you are serving IDD clients and individuals in the community, but you're also serving their families, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot discount the families. And in particular, in my job, I do connect with a lot of parents and parent groups
Mhm.
because we are helping them to advocate for their children in the community, whether it be for housing or for other types of services, you know, and they are often the ones that are living with and or supporting their loved one. And they need those supports as well. So really, the family is the whole package, and not just the person with the disability.
Got it. Got it.
Absolutely. So, you know, housing has transformed quite a bit since we started back in the early 1900s. We've started in Watertown with this beautiful campus where there were over 600 people with disabilities living together, and this was almost a town, smack between, you know, Madison and Milwaukee, with its own bank and its own church and its own institutions, and it was really innovative at the time. But in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, started thinking differently and saying, you know, this is an institutional model and people really need to be getting out and living in the community. That's where people belong. And so the group home was then established. So group homes are still viable today. There are many group homes that people live at today. It's a wonderful option. However, it's not an option for everyone. So right now, there are people that are living in a group home setting, and it's a very highly supportive setting, a supervised setting where there's someone living there or staying there who is, you know, supporting them constantly, that may not need all of that support, but there really aren't a lot of other options for them. And
Right.
so that's where Bethesda Cornerstone Village comes in. So this is now a brand new concept of independent living apartments. This is not a licensed facility. This is independent living apartments where each person receives their own lease, and they bring in their own services to support themselves. And it's an integrated model. So it's not all persons with disabilities. It's not just another way to put an institution together. It's actually integrated with people who do not have disabilities. So you can see how we've had this transformation, and it's about the way we think about disabilities and the way and people's abilities and their ability to be within the community.
Right. So you're addressing that unseen that unseen issue where instead of having somebody have to be almost hidden away. I mean, that is a beautiful looking place, the institutional campus I assume that's in Watertown, and it's gorgeous looking, but nobody would be there. And so
Right.
the model you've come to is to put people into the community so that they can build their life right in the neighborhoods where we live, where everybody lives.
Right, right. And that institution is long gone, and group homes are fading out as well. I think the group home model is really good for some people, and it will
Mhm.
continue to be a good model for some people. It's not a good model for everyone. So we need to find, housing models that are safe, affordable options for people with disabilities that meet the spectrum of needs.
Who would be a good candidate for the Cornerstone Village? And when you're saying group homes is it a matter of like the degree of support that you need that defines who would be more comfortable in a group home setting as opposed to being in the more integrated housing with their own lease, their own independent space?
So I think support is one aspect, but I
Mhm.
think it really boils down to personal choice. So
Okay.
when you talk to individuals, um, they have their own idea of how they want to live their life, where they want to live, how they want to live. They want privacy, they want independence, they want to clean their own fridge, they want to cook their own meals and fold their own laundry. I mean, things that you may not think of or that you may take for granted on a day-to-day basis
Mhm.
that they may or may not be doing within the confines of a group home setting. They want to make their own choices. And sometimes that choice is to live within a group setting, and that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, we want people to have choice. But a lot of times people are saying, gosh, I want more, or I want different. I want a garden. I want a balcony. I want to be able to, have a walk-in closet where I can see all my clothes. I mean, people have wishes and hopes and dreams, just like you and I do.
Everybody,
Um,
yes, yeah.
yeah, so that's what's exciting about it is this gives people one more option. Um, and being able to bring in their own supports so that they can live supported and yet independent.
Mhm. So does Bethesda supply any of that support, or are there support services that you offer that you may be offering to somebody who lives in one of your Cornerstone villages? And then it could be some other provider of a support coming into a Cornerstone village and providing an individual. So it's their own care team, basically.
Sure, sure. So Bethesda does provide these supports.
Mhm.
So for example, the first development we have is in Victoria, Minnesota. I'll show that in just a second. But
Okay.
we have supports out there in Minnesota. Only one person who lives there right now has selected Bethesda as their provider. And it's not because Bethesda is a lousy provider, it's because people have relationships with their providers, long time relationships with
Right,
people that they trust. And we
right.
don't want to sever that. So when you have a licensed facility, you kind of have to give up those relationships, go into the licensed facility and take on whatever care is available in that facility. Whereas within, an affordable housing development where you have your own lease, you bring in your own services, you bring in the people that you trust. You have those relationships with. So of course, if someone wants our services, they're there. But at the same time, there is 100% no obligation. And in fact, we want to keep those things separate. We
Mhm.
never want that to be a conflict.
That's very interesting. Maybe you'll cover this in a bit, but can you speak a little bit to what this transition from group homes or even the availability of group homes and now a new availability of independent integrated apartment living gives to parents of disabled adults?
It's huge. So you're right on point because this slide kind of talks a little bit about that. I
Hmm.
mentioned that individuals um, in a survey that was done with people that have intellectual and developmental disabilities, they have these wants and needs. They want safety and independence, and they want to be a part of a community. And then you have parents that want those same things. But we are finding that we're in a little bit of a crisis right now because there are not the appropriate housing options safe and affordable for persons with disabilities. Therefore, a lot of individuals remain at home living with their parents. And as their parents age, the parents become concerned. What is the next step? Where is my son or daughter going to go when I am unable to care for them? So these are things that we're also concerned with, because we have a growing number of adults with disabilities that are going to be losing their housing because their elderly parent will no longer be able to take care of them. And like this slide shows, about 70% of adults with IDD live with an aging parent. This is something that is, that it's we're on the precipice of a really urgent issue. So we need to give options, and we need to start giving options now while people have the opportunity to make a safe and informed transition. Transitions are always challenging. It's not easy to move from the home you've lived in for 15, 20, 25 years with your parent to move to an independent setting. And it's even harder if you're doing that in the midst of grief because you've lost your parent or your loved one. So we want to give those options sooner rather than later. The other thing is affordability. I mean, a lot of these adults are living at home because there are no affordable options, or very few affordable options available for people. People are living on the disability. It's a very small amount. The costs often exceed what they're able to pay for a quality housing arrangement. And so they often just elect to remain at home. And so you can see how these things, end up kind of swirling together into a little bit of a crisis.
Now, I don't want to preempt what's coming up, but by you saying that, it seems like you are telling us that there's going to be units in this integrated housing that are going to be designed to be affordable for people with an income of $9,200 a year. And then some units that obviously would not be the same price for people who have higher incomes.
Yes. And I think that's the great thing about the model that I'll be sharing with you, is that it's really flexible, and all of the communities that we are going into and developing this model in, we are developing different models based on the community and based on the needs of the community. And affordable is almost not negotiable. It has to be affordable for that person with disabilities in order for them to live there. And we want it to be a forever home. If that's what they choose, we want them to live there long term.
Do you visualize this serving people who are, like you're talking about, living at the home they've known for 20, 25 years? Are you visualizing this option for younger adults? Or do you see people who've been at home and who are in their 40s or 50s and might be living with an aging parent? Or is that not your audience, do you think?
That's a great question. So we're having conversations with community organizations, and we're finding that it's going to be a mix. We are finding that there are young people with disabilities aging out of the foster care system that are potentially at risk of homelessness unless they have a safe, affordable option available to them. So those are young people that need that type of support. And then you have people that are well into adulthood that would be making a transition into this kind of housing for the very first time. And that's what we found at our Victoria location in Victoria, Minnesota. It runs the gamut. We have young people in their 20s, and we have people in their 40s and 50s. There is a move-in video, I think it's still on YouTube, of one of the gentlemen, Kurt. He's a self-advocate and a person with disabilities who advocates for others in the community. And you can see his euphoria in moving in. He's just ecstatic. It's just the neatest video, watching him move into the community.
Well, and like you said, things that most of us get to take for granted. We get to move away. We get to establish ourselves and our independence in our own homes and our own apartments.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I won't dwell on this too much, but the need is there. The need in Wisconsin is there. So in Wisconsin, we have 145,000 people living with some sort of cognitive disability. And that is a lot of people. And these are people that all need some sort of housing arrangement. We can't ignore this population.
These are
And the vote.
adults.
Right, and these
Yeah.
are right, and these and of course, we're talking about people that are living, in poverty, because they're they're earning disability, they are working part-time, they're out there doing their very best, but their very best is not going to pay a market rate apartment.
Right.
So these are things that we just have to keep in mind. I mean, people are just priced out of the market. So, the standard disability check is going to be, $866.78. I mean, what on earth would you be doing with that amount? That you're not going to be able to find much, even if you had a roommate. What are you going to be able to find for that amount, plus all of your other expenses? And what we consider to be someone who is cost burdened by their housing is anyone who pays 30% or more for their housing. And people with disabilities distinctly fall into this category. And so they are a population that needs a lot of attention. We need to be able to have some dedicated housing for them that is safe and affordable, and that meets their needs.
Mm-hmm. And that number is likely distorted because like if 33.8% of Wisconsinites with a disability are paying more than a third of their income, that doesn't count the people who are at home living with their parents.
That's a fabulous point. So yes, I mean, we have the data is skewed because people are living at home,
Right.
because they're not out in the market, because they've elected not to, because it's just too risky.
So if home wasn't an option, that number could be astronomical. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
There's no doubt. So, I mean, we see this in Wisconsin, but you look at these numbers in any state and you're going to see the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's right here in our backyard. There's no doubt about it. So this is where I get to talk about something exciting to me. And this is the solution, or one of the solutions, and why I'm here today, is what we're calling Cornerstone Village. The Cornerstone Village is an integrated community. So a place where people with IDD can live with people that do not have disabilities in an inclusive and welcoming environment, in an independent setting, like I said, with an independent apartment with their own lease, bringing in their own supports, not a licensed facility, not an institution,
Mm-hmm.
where they are, in charge of their own destiny. We believe strongly that people deserve safe, affordable housing. And the dignity that goes along with that. So you can see a picture of the first development that we have in Victoria, Minnesota. That's a suburban location. So as we go into urban locations, which we are doing right now, they won't look exactly like that, but this is our first location. And of course it opened right in the middle of the pandemic, but it's doing so well. All of the units designated for persons with disabilities have been full. Like I said, it's a mix. So this is really a groundbreaking concept of bringing people together and saying, we're going to do this differently. We're going to create a model where people are living together and building community together. And we are not placing people in the shadows.
Right.
We're
They're
building
just
community life.
Neighbors with each other. So that begs the question of, like, you're doing this very purposefully. So you build this beautiful new apartment building, and you have a certain number of a percentage of the housing is dedicated to people with IDD, and then the other is open to the general public. Do you screen those applicants for those? How do you integrate that non-IDD population into the idea of living in a community that's built around integrating people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
Can anybody move in, or is there a process of like making sure people are aware of what they are, where they're moving?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So, so first of all, each location is going to be a little bit different. Some are for adults 55 and older, plus persons with disabilities. Some are more geared towards families. Some are just not age restricted, that are in areas that might appeal more towards, working adults. So we're going to see a wide variety. And to kind of answer your question, most of these developments are affordable, not just for the people that are persons with disabilities. They're going to be affordable for others as well. So there will be ranges of rent options available to people, plus market rate options as well. And I think that a lot of it is going to have to go towards the marketing and the way we talk about this, because this is very mission driven. We want to attract people that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So, when people, go out of their way to buy organic or buy fair trade coffee, or patronize Black owned businesses, this is one of those solutions, to be a part of something bigger than yourself, to be a part of a solution. And we are hoping to attract people that are like-minded in that way, that would have an interest in being a part of the community with us. So again, this is groundbreaking. We are going into some uncharted waters. We have to be really intentional about it. We can't just leave it to chance. Right. So there's a lot of work that has to be done around that. But we're seeing in Victoria, our first location, that these things are integrating more naturally than we could have ever anticipated.
We have a question from somebody in the audience. They're asking if the village is physically designed. Just a second, I lost the question. If the village is physically designed to promote interaction and inclusion, if that's part of the plan of the physical design of the buildings.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that's a great question. I'm going to go to this slide because that's going to kind of lead me into some other things. So okay. I'm not a real estate person, but what I can tell you about real estate is that real estate is expensive. So common areas are expensive because they don't generate money, right? I mean, units that you rent generate money. Every Cornerstone Village has community space, and a lot of community space. So not just a gym, not just a laundry room, but actually gathering spaces where people, not just within that community, but people from the greater community can participate in classes, exercise, community events. So there's a pretty significant investment in space in order for these things to happen. So that's an excellent question. It's an investment that we're making, and we hope that the communities we go into are going to utilize that. And in some cases, the outdoor space is just as important. The courtyards, the gardens, those kinds of things as well are fantastic gathering places.
It sounds like you're talking about the community in a broader sense than the people who are living in the building. So you have community space within the building that residents can access, but you also have plans for community space that like the outside community can come in and interact and have positive experiences for community events.
So part of this is that, we're not building buildings in farm fields. We're building buildings in established communities that have needs, wants, desires. They have, issues, and there are people that have, there's community life already happening there. We want to integrate into that community life. And one of the best ways for us to do that is to offer our spaces as a nonprofit, to be able to offer our spaces to other community groups so that they can use that to be a part of that, to open our doors. So we're hoping to, as we go into each community, build relationships, not just with, nonprofit organizations, but with smaller entities. I mean, we're already building relationships with neighborhood associations, with churches, and we want people coming in the doors, because that is going to enhance community life. This is part of the community.
Right.
Yeah, good question. So real quick, this is sort of the 5 pillars of what we're trying to establish here. Independence and inclusivity. So giving people the tools to be independent and being inclusive. So nothing we're doing is going to exclude people. Every mindset we have is about inclusion at all times. And then affordable and high quality units. So we don't have units set aside for persons with disabilities that are different than our market rate units. All of the units are the same. And there is physical design elements in each space that are universal, that are meant to assist people with disabilities. So for example, walk-in showers and certain types of door handles, and then smart home technology. So like smart thermostats and things like that, and smart locks that are designed to help people with disabilities, but also to help people without disabilities. So our units overall will have these design elements, these universal design elements, and they'll all be very high quality design elements. That community and resident life. So, you're the person who asked the question about space, that's one element. The other element that's really different about what we're doing here is that we are going to have a resident life coordinator on site, curating programming, helping to establish those relationships, to broaden the community life. That's another investment that Bethesda Cornerstone Village is making in this, in this venture. So we are working on programming, working with different organizations to understand how programming should look in each community, because it's going to look different in every community we go to. And then that last pillar is consumer choice. So again, we're not forcing ourselves, our services on people. We want them to bring in services. Now, Robin, you may have noticed that at the bottom right of the screen, we have some active projects in the area, which is really exciting. So the first one is on Highland. So that's on the near west side. And we just got WIDA funding for that location. And that is going to be a senior housing development, also for persons with disabilities of any age. And we are just tickled, so excited, working on some community relationships right now around that. And then people that have been following this a little bit more closely would know that Bethesda was looking at a parcel of land in Wauwatosa that we did not get. And of course, we don't give up that easily. So we have been searching for another parcel of land, and I assure you that we will be making an announcement soon. There is a really dedicated parent group in Wauwatosa, and if there are any parents watching right now, hello, you are part of the solution. You have made this a reality in so many ways, but we are working on this location. So I can't announce it tonight with too many things that are still in play here, but we are pretty focused on having a Wauwatosa location.
Very exciting. You want to give us any hints? Is it bigger than a bread box?
I wish I could.
I shouldn't even ask you that. I know you can't do that.
Well, I will tell you that it's just so exciting. Again, this is a community that is just perfectly designed for something like this. It's
Yeah.
a walkable community. It's a welcoming community. You're working on these issues of diversity and inclusion all the time in schools and community groups like Tosa Together. So we know that we're going to build some great partnerships here, and we can't
Very
wait.
exciting news. It's
Yeah.
very exciting. And to have the other locations so close. I mean, I'm a big fan of very fuzzy borders, and 3200 West Highland is not far from Wauwatosa either. You
No.
know? So tell me about that unit you can talk all about. So is that a new building or is that a refurbishment of an older building?
That's a great question. So all of the buildings are going to be new construction, and
Okay.
including the one on Highland. So the one on Highland, it actually is land that was donated by Advocate Aurora. They have a building on that site right now. And we cannot thank them enough for that generous donation. That really was one of the catalysts for making this possible. So at some point in the future, that building will be demolished and they will move forward with developing that. We've had some amazing conversations with the neighborhood associations there in that area. They're really, I'd say they're akin to Tosa in that they're so active. And so engaged.
How do you get input from that? You said every neighborhood looks different, so every facility will look different. How do you, when you're talking about having input from neighborhood associations, are you running focus groups? Are you running community meetings? How do you go about gathering the information you need to make the right kind of choices for that neighborhood?
That's a great question. So with the Highland property, we were invited to these two community associations. One is Historic Concordia, and the other is Cold Spring Park. So two neighborhood associations there, and both really active. One of the things about that area is that there are some historic buildings and a lot of preservation work going on. So the look and feel of the building and of the neighborhood is really important. The other thing that's really important is being a good neighbor. And so, we had questions like, well, are you going to be a good neighbor? Are you going to be there to make sure that the building is maintained? Are you going to make sure that, that the people inside are safe? There were some great questions. People have questions they want to know. So we were invited into these community settings, and I imagine that once we get to that place with Wauwatosa, we will be doing the same thing.
Right. So do you when you're talking to the community, I mean, it's interesting that people are asking you if your residents are going to be safe. Is there concern, like either from a spot of like, is this a safe choice for somebody with an intellectual or developmental disability to live on their own because people are not familiar with that? Or is there pushback have you experienced any pushback of like kind of a not in my backyard kind of feeling?
Sure. Yeah, so we had, you and I had a little bit of a conversation about this early on. And I think that there's just a lot of misconceptions about people with disabilities and the supports that they may need. And, will they be safe in an independent environment? Because I think a lot of times there's still this feeling that an institution may be the best model, or a group home may be the best model, and will people thrive in an apartment setting? And we're here to assure people that they will thrive, and we will be there every step of the way to make sure they thrive, along with other organizations that we're working with as well. So that's a part of it, is just sort of a misunderstanding about that population. I think the other thing is just, people see things that have come and gone in their neighborhoods, and then they get concerned. So, one person at one of the neighborhood associations said, well, I've seen group homes come and go, and it's never a good thing. I don't, are you just one of these group homes? Well, unfortunately, it can be a little easy to get a group home license. People, they buy a home, they open a group home, it stays open for a couple of years, and it dies out, it moves on. Bethesda has 116 years worth of history. So we are here to stay. But again, this is not a licensed facility. This is an independent living apartment setting, where there's going to be a lot of activity and a lot of life, because we will have people of all walks of life, and lots of socioeconomic backgrounds living together in these settings. So it's just about answering questions, and then just being patient, because it's okay to have questions. It's okay to be concerned for your neighborhood. We just want to educate people.
Right. I love your just the general expression of patience and listening, and not closing anybody down, for asking questions. Very smart. Tell me, well, one question occurred to me a little while ago when you were talking about people in the Minnesota group. Have you ever had the experience of a parent wanting to move into one of the spaces that is for the not IDD population? Have you ever had a family come in as like, my growing son will live here, and we're going to get an apartment on the 3rd floor?
So not yet, but that is
Okay.
that is something that we have discussed, and that is absolutely a possibility.
Okay.
In fact, it's a possibility if we have if we have a family member that wants to live with another family member, there will be ways that we can make that work. And then we also know that sometimes that there are there are ways to have people partner up and live together very successfully and share services as roommates. So there are some really interesting and creative solutions, but yes, I anticipate that there will be family members that will want to move in to be close to their loved one, and and then both have their own independent setting.
Well, and in the Wauwatosa, where we don't know where that is yet, but you're also bringing, I mean, if you're making an investment that's benefiting IDD population, but you're also making an investment in our community by providing housing for seniors. I mean, if you're downsizing from your home, there's not a lot of options in Wauwatosa of where do you go after you move out of your family home. This brings more housing options to lots of people beyond the IDD population.
Sure, absolutely. And just to be clear, so the Highland location is for older adults, and the Wauwatosa location we anticipate is going to be a mix of affordable and market rate and all ages. So yes, I think we will have older adults that move in. I think we're also going to have young professionals. I think it's going to be an interesting mix.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
In the Wauwatosa area. But yes, people need a way to downsize affordably.
Right. Or or like you said, new working young people need a way to get into a housing market to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you said that all of the apartments are basically the same. So you're not creating one kind of unit for the ones that are going to be less income making or less of an income stream for Bethesda, and another kind for people who pay a market rate. There's going to be a standard of design and benefits for all groups. Are they also similar in size? Do you see any development where you're talking about a roommate possibility? Are there some 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom units, things like that you're building into the structure?
Sure. So it depends on the design or the development, but I would say the bulk are going to be 1 and 2 bedrooms, in some cases 3, and then there's a development in Minnesota where we're looking at actually some 4-bedroom, and that's a family development, so kind of different than what we're talking about in the Wauwatosa area. But yes, absolutely. So we think that roommate possibilities for sure, but there will be a wide variety of options. And yes, the design elements will be exactly the same. Now, I'll just mention with the smart home technology, there will be standards for smart home technology, like I mentioned, the thermostat and the smart locks and things like that. But we also have a technology arm. And so if people need more assistance with smart home technology, and um, we have all of these amazing designs to help people be more independent, we can actually come and consult with people in their home setting, actually set up these types of arrangements where people can, basically design smart home technology for the individual's needs, and
Oh,
even help to create some behavioral supports around that.
yeah.
And so that's something that we are working on as well. So if what is in the apartment as the standing option is not sufficient, we will have additional options available, like, for example, door and window alarms. If there's any particular reason why that should be a need, or water sensors, or, so many amazing options that are available.
That's really interesting. And you've, in the last few seconds, you've answered two questions that have come in. One about, one from a woman named Anne, who has a nephew who's married, an IDD nephew who's married, and she's wondering how he and his wife might fit into this type of a setting. It sounds like it would very much accommodate them. And then another question that was asking directly if you see changes coming to the services in the future that make the housing integration easier. And one thing they were talking about was telehealth and like Uber and Lyft availability, special connections into the community that way. So it sounds like that's very much in place.
Absolutely. So, I mean, telehealth is something that I think we've all had to learn to live with within the last year or so. And that goes for persons with disabilities. So some of the smart home technology actually falls right in line with that. Something that we can work with a person on. And that same technology can be used to talk to mom and dad at their home, and,
Right.
there's just a lot of potential there. But yeah, I mean, Tosa is a great community because there's a lot of public transportation and things. But yes, I mean, access to Uber and Lyft. We want to integrate all of these things to make it accessible
And successful.
and successful.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just had a great question come into my mind. It just popped right back out. And I'll think of it again in a second. Tell me, let's see. I'm looking over our questions just to make sure I've got them all here. We're doing pretty good. Thoughts on when somebody, this is a new opportunity for a lot of people in the community, a lot of parents who have grown children that are IDD, and a lot of IDD individuals who are advocating for themselves. Are you doing any kind of, I'm assuming that you have clients that you know already, and you have organizations where these clients are hearing about this, and you have ways of bringing people in. Are you doing any kind of rubric or information about what it takes to live on your own for somebody who this is a brand new option? Maybe they've been living at their own house since they were, first became an adult. Maybe they're 30 something years old now. How do you help a family and an individual decide that independent living is a good and an appropriate move for that person?
Sure, absolutely. So I think young people, especially coming up through Wauwatosa, have some amazing options. So the school district has a transitions program for young people 18 to 21 that helps them with those types of skills. And it's really exciting. We hope to partner with them. There's so many potentials there. But what if you are in your 40s or 50s and you are looking at making this transition later in life? I think that, so first of all, I think we'd be looking at support, using a support provider to help work on some of these skills. But we've also talked about, do we have some sort of trial living environment that gives people the option of coming in to try this setting? This is a very preliminary concept and idea, but we know that this is really new. And we also know that it may not be for everyone. Someone may try it and say, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. and that's okay. So this concept of trial living is something that we have just sort of began to play with, and we'll see. But I think we're going to cross that bridge, and each person that we work with is going to have very specific needs as they make that transition, and we're going to work with them to make sure that they're successful.
So your lease might be preceded by a 3-month trial period to make sure that this is the right thing, and then you go into your year apartment lease.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure. We were talking about, is there a unit that is actually a trial living unit? Almost like, hey, it's all furnished and you can come and try this living, or, is it, hey, you can move in on a trial basis? I think we need to sort of vet these ideas a little bit more to see
Okay.
what would work, and talk with families.
Talk to the families, see what they need. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So how do people that are listening and people that will be watching this presentation as a recording, how do they help? How do they help? Maybe they don't know anyone that they can pass this word along to, but it's an interesting topic, and it certainly adds to the diversity of Wauwatosa and to that near West Side neighborhood. How do we help make this happen for you? What support do you need from the community in general and from individuals more specifically?
Sure. So we're obviously at the very beginning stages here, but as things progress, there are going to be opportunities to partner with us, to advocate with us for funding opportunities to help us make this affordable, not just for the persons with disabilities, but actually for other people as well, to keep affordable options in Wauwatosa, which I know are desperately needed.
Right.
So to watch for any calls for action, where watch for any presentations. We hope to be out in the community, working with people, working with the parent groups, working with others, and just keep your eyes and ears open. And I think the other thing is, just realizing that if you walk away with anything today, is just realizing that there is a population in Wauwatosa, a constituency in Wauwatosa that has a voice, and they're exercising that voice, and they're saying we need more, we want more, and we want it here. We grew up here, we love Wauwatosa, and we want it here.
You want to stay here?
That's really exciting. And so that's what we're trying to work with right now. And so we just need more people to come and support those voices.
That's really exciting. That's really exciting. Tell us how, so somebody's watched this and now they just want to talk to you very desperately, or they want to learn more. Where do they go to do that? How do they get in touch with you, or how do they find out more about Bethesda?
Sure. So you can definitely go to our website at BethesdaLC.org, or I actually may try to pull up my screen here and type my address, because I really should have thought of that ahead of time.
Oh, that's okay. Even if you say it out loud, our handy dandy Facebook moderator, Katie, can put it right into the comment box. It'll live along with this.
Okay, so my email address is Allison, which is ALLISON Katula, KATULA, at BethesdaLC.org. I just put it on the screen, so I hope you can see it.
Beautiful.
So feel free to reach out to me, especially if you are an advocate for a loved one, a self-advocate, if you are a part of a community group, if you want to know more information, I would love to hear from you.
That's fantastic. Allison, this hour has just zoomed by. I think we could talk to you for longer and longer. And I know that we're going to have you back again at the end of July, the fourth Thursday in July, or the last Thursday in July. Tell us what that talk will be about. So
I believe we'll actually have some other people from Bethesda joining us for that presentation. And I'm hoping that we're going to have some more details about our location in Wauwatosa and what you can expect. Again, this is all very preliminary and early, but we certainly want to get the community involved early. So
Fantastic.
please stay tuned.
Fantastic. We will, we definitely will. And I hate to end this, but we're at 8 o'clock. And so I'm going to do our final goodbyes. And I hope everybody watching will join me in thanking our delightful guest, Allison Katula from Bethesda. Thank you so much, Allison, for taking time to talk with us. It was really—
Oh, Robin, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was fun to talk to you. And thanks also to our Facebook audience. Your time, your interest, your thoughtful comments and questions are always appreciated. And as always, a special thank you to our very generous friends at Bostic, whose support makes the entire Tosa Talk series possible. We love them to pieces. Remember, if you've seen this tonight and you want to share it with somebody else, or you're just hearing about it too late, you can find a recording of this presentation and all the Tosa Talks presentations here on Facebook, as well as on our Tosa Together YouTube channel, which is an exciting library of resources. Feel free to reach out to Tosa Together anytime through our Facebook page, through our website, or by emailing us directly at tosatogether@gmail.com. And be sure to wave to Tosa Together members and members of other groups doing great work in Wauwatosa at the 4th of July parade this year. And with that, I will say goodnight. This is Robin Luther with Tosa Together, and it has really been my pleasure to be here with our special guest, Allison, as well as with our audience. Thanks for being part of Tosa Talks and our mutual effort to build a diverse, thriving community. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.